out of all the projects you've done, and you have like an IMDb page the size of like a small phone book, what have you found the most creatively challenging and rewarding?
Well, I mean, I did my own show up here in Canada. They've had a mental lapse, and they gave me 6 episodes, and I wrote all of them. And it was a really weird show. I wanted it to be kind of like the Jack Benny show, where it's like at a house, and but I would talk directly to the audience. The audience would yell back at me, and weird things would happen. There was a Sasquatch that lived next door with an evil woman who wanted to kill me, and it was weird, but it didn't land well here in Canada because they just don't get it. But when I get Canadian journalists always ask, why do Canadians have such a great sense of humor? And I'm like, that is not true. They don't. There's a few really great comics, and there are great comedians in Canada, but I think the general run of Canadian sense of humor is really bad. And it shows in the side of television that we make.
Yes, that is the voice of Canadian comedian legend Sean Cullen. And you've tuned into another episode of Comedy History 101, where we school you in comedy. I am Harmon, hello, and I am thrilled to have Sean as our guest today on CH101. That's what we're calling it now. As mentioned, Sean is our guest. You might know him from his numerous TV appearances on The Tonight Show, The Late Show with Craig Kilborn, The Ellen Show, MadTV. You have maybe seen him live at the Edinburgh Festival just for laughs, or with his legendary comedy musical group, Corky and the Juice Pigs. And we're going to do a deep dive into Sean's comedy, the origin story of Corky and the Juice Pigs, and, in general, the Canadian comedy scene. But before we jump into the episode, a quick plug. On Sunday, August 4th, 8:30 at the People's Improv Theater in Manhattan, I'll be presenting my show, AI versus Human Roast Battle. Come out and see a machine learning AI take on a human rapper in a roast battle of tomorrow. And you can find out all about my tour dates on harmonleon.com or on the social medias at harmonleon. Also, take some time to like, subscribe, and comment on Comedy History 101 on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, or on our website, comedyhistory101.com. And now, without further ado...
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone!
Excuse me! Comedy History 101. Yeah, nice meeting you. I don't know if our paths have actually crossed through the years, but I remember seeing you like at the Melbourne Comedy Festival with the Juice Pigs.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a bit you did. I don't even know if it was like an improv, but it sticks in my mind to this day. I think you guys just kept repeating Mr. Concierge like over and over again.
Yeah, it was a song called Concierge, and it's really weird. Yeah, it was a strange bit.
Was that an improv, or was that in the regular repertoire? Or?
We didn't do it often, but yeah, it was kind of an improvised song that we, once in a while we do it, but it was kind of free form, It's different every time.
Yeah, it sticks to my head to this very day.
It's a beautiful word, concierge.
Yeah, and every time I see a concierge, that's the immediate thing that goes in my earworm hole.
well, I'm glad I did something in this life.
Yeah. So anyways, the theme of the podcast is comedy history. We do a deep dive. What is your comedy history? What, like when you were a kid, probably growing up somewhere in Canada, I don't know, I'm going to assume maybe Ontario.
I did grow up in Ontario in a town called Peterborough. It's a town of about 58,000 people at the time. And it's kind of about an hour and a half northeast of Toronto. And it was kind of a working class town, but at a university. So there were hippies and rednecks everywhere. My dad was a factory worker. My mom was an emergency nurse. And I loved watching comedy. I don't know why, but I always loved. We watched Monty Python. That was the best. You could see it on PBS. That's the only way I could really see it, the original series. And then so I remember starting to watch Saturday Night Live. I was like 10 years old, and I remember the ads for the first episode was with George Carlin, and he was like, anything can happen. And then you could see Chevy Chase climbing a ladder behind him and then falling off of it. So that's what that's where I first started to really love watching comedy. And then Second City was a huge influence on me too growing up.
Was like SCTV, or were you actually going into Toronto and seeing the live shows early on?
Just the television show. Just the idea that these people were Canadian, and for the most part, they were Canadian, and they did this show. Their first season, I think, was shot in Edmonton, of all places, because they got some kind of tax credit there, and it was really bare bones, but really funny. And I just thought, hey, this could be a job I could do. These people are doing it. So I think it inspired a lot of comics in Canada to pursue it, because they saw, oh, we're actually, those are Canadian people. They're making a living doing comedy. They were wrong, though. We were wrong.
You were wrong.
Yeah, we're
it was in a way.
Well, no, Canada is a really tough place to do comedy because small population, and you have to compete with America and all the American kind of influence. Even Just for Laughs, the Comedy Festival of Montreal, was basically an American comedy convention with a few Canadians sprinkled in. And to get noticed there, I managed to, but and the Juice Speaks managed to, but it was not easy. It wasn't really tailored for Canadians to shine. It was made for, Americans. At that time, the only place you could really see comedy was, say, go to New York or go to Los Angeles. And Montreal was kind of this place where all of these people from Hollywood, agents and, executives and network executives would come and see what was happening and get to look at these people and showcase these people. Now you can watch YouTube, or you don't need to go. So
you don't need to leave your phone.
No, you don't. So back then, before social media even existed, that was it. You'd only see comedy on The Tonight Show or Letterman, or you'd see it on George Flatter's Comedy Hour, or we did that, I think, you'd be on the Improv, Night at the Improv. So that was pretty much it. Or HBO would do specials every once in a while, but that's so Montreal was a big thing. But Canada, if you're trying to make stuff here, it's very difficult because there's no money, and to get money to make a show, you have to, everything's kind of like subsidized by a big, what do you call it? Like a fund that all the
grants and whatnot.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fund that's contributed to by the major networks and taxpayers. And then if you're going to make something and get money for that, it has to appeal to like every single person in Canada.
The Red Green Show.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be kind of right down the middle. And that's not me, or, that's not my thing. And there's so much great comedy here, but it never gets on TV, So, yeah, it's harder, but I always thought, you get to work in a place where almost no one sees you, and you cut your teeth and figure out what works and what's good and bad. And you go through your craft, you figure out your craft. And then when I finally got to go and do something like Just for Laughs and showcase for people, it was like, this is easy. Are you kidding me? Like these people are so easy to please,
Yeah, like before that, were you doing like these crazy gigs I've heard of where you work up like where they have the oil rigs and you're in like
Oh,
some
yeah.
remote area, like the Northern Territories, or and those gigs I've heard about.
Sure.
Only
Well,
in
there's
legend.
tons. Yeah. Well, there's, back when we started, there was only, this was the 80s. I left the university. I went to university for acting and I left after 3 years out of a 4-year course. And I started doing comedy that summer and with the boys.
Did you meet Phil? And I forgot
Yeah.
did you
Greg.
meet him in college? Yeah, Greg in
Yeah.
at university, or
Yeah, we went to university together for Bachelor of Fine Arts and Acting. They all finished and I did not. So I just thought, well, no one's going to ever ask me for this degree. If I'm going to go and act, they're not going to say, whoa. Do you have a degree? We can't let you do this role. So
Yeah.
I just thought, what appealed to me about comedy was you write your own script and then perform it. You don't audition, and you get paid and that's it, so it's kind of a sink or swim thing. And it's so immediate, and you don't have to repeat over and over again the same crap. Like I've done big theater shows like The Producers in Toronto and big, musicals and stuff. And it's just like the McDonald's of theater. It's like everything has to be the same for anyone who sees this product anywhere in the world. So you don't really have a lot of leeway.
Not a lot of improv in The Producers.
No.
You
And
can't
that's
go
where I
off
get
on
the
that.
joy.
Yeah,
That's when I get the joy, not something
Yeah.
different every time. But I love to make it a completely different experience for whoever comes to see whatever show I'm doing. So that's not fun. I don't like repeating myself 100 times at the same exact way.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
Did you guys start Corky the Juice Pigs while you were in university, or did that come like right after?
We started right out of university and it was great. We were all just like, let's give it a go. And, this isn't going to be anything. We didn't know where it was going to lead. We just really enjoyed doing it. We did an amateur comedy contest.
So you guys formed like right out of university, and then you moved to Toronto?
Yeah, we came to Toronto, which was kind of it's the biggest city in Canada. So we started there and we did some open mic nights, and there's a comedy.
And where was that at? Was it like around the time of the Rivoli where Kids in the Hall got started, or?
That was a little later. What we did first was we went to Yuck Yucks, which was the comedy club across the country. It was kind of like a monopoly. And we thought, well, that's the place to go. So we did some amateur nights and immediately got gigs out of it. Usually it takes a long time, but we were obviously more accomplished performers because that's what we do. We were trained for it. And so we started getting gigs and we did a tour with Yuck Yucks across the country, but they paid us the same as a single comic. We had to split it. They don't pay for your transport or anything like that. It was kind of like, this isn't really going to work because it's not feasible for us to live this way. We found an agent and we left Yuck Yucks and we started doing universities and colleges across the country and touring. And that went really well. And so we got to hone our skills, but we were in like places all over the place, like the weird towns. And, I remember once we had to drive from Ottawa to Winnipeg to do a show,
That's
which
a
is
stretch.
24 hours driving. And we had 2 days to get there. And I was the only driver. So I was insane by the time we got to Winnipeg.
But when you started at Yuck Yucks, who was coming up at the time? Was it Norm Macdonald around that time? Or
Yeah, Norm Macdonald. We did a couple shows with him. He's lovely, very funny guy. Just one of the funniest people I've ever known. Also, Harlan Williams. Trying to think who else. Alan George were really big at that time. I don't know if you know them.
I've heard of them before, yeah.
Yeah, they're a
I
duo.
did a deep dive episode on history of Yuck Yucks with, what's it, Kevin Carter, I think?
Yeah. Evan
Carter, sorry, yeah. Sorry, Evan.
Yeah. So trying to think of who else was touring. It's such a long time ago, but those were the big ones. When we did a couple tours with them, and they were the ones who kind of broke bigger in America. I can't remember. Simon Rakoff was a great stand-up, still doing it too. It was really geared to stand-up, single stand-up with a microphone. That's where they made their money. and it really didn't suit us. And when you're at that time, stand-up was like, they were stand-ups, we were like a novelty act. They thought of us as like, a juggler,
Yeah. There's always that rivalry,
disdain.
Well, I think
for
it's just
what
like
we
sort of
did.
some jealousy sometimes because it's like,
Yeah.
you get the rock star kind of energy in the room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we could go on and just overpower a room with our energy
Yeah.
and songs, and it was totally different from what a stand-up could do. People came around to us because we weren't assholes, and we
Right.
also were nice to tour with. We weren't terrible people, and also we stayed. Like it wasn't just a one-off thing. We continued. So, I toured with that for 10 years doing that, but we went out of Yuckus, we went to colleges, and then it kind of like, where else could we go? We were thinking we went to Winnipeg first to Just for Laughs, and I think it was 90 maybe or 89. We did our first time there, but we just went and busked on the street, and then the security stopped us, but people were enjoying it, so they
At
gave
Just
us
for Laughs. So you just went first as buskers at Just for Laughs
yeah.
outside the venues, but you were like getting more attention outside.
Yeah, they realized that people were liking it, so they gave us a pass to just do that. And we managed to get on a couple of shows during that festival, and then we came back in our own right and we're an act at the festival, and it went really well. We got a lot of attention because we were very different. We weren't really a sketch troupe. We weren't really a stand-up. We were like a real hybrid of a lot of different things, different kinds of performance. And we got a deal with Disney. Yeah, Disney. And that was, for a little bit of money as a development deal. And that was the big thing. And Just for Laughs, you could get a development deal.
And there were crazy development deals back in the days, like $500,000 and up.
It made no sense.
Yeah.
When we were there, the biggest one at the time was for $500,000 he died. He's a great, funny guy. He talked like this, and he was kind of like a Stephen Wright, but stoned. And I forget his name.
Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah. And they gave him $500,000. The idea was they're going to build a show around you, a sitcom or whatever. And that just didn't work for him. We were kind of in the same boat because no one understood what to do with us. Like no one could figure out what to do. So we got that deal, and it was kind of disappointing because, the deal ran out. It was a year and we made nothing out of it. And then we ended up trying to find other places. So we went to Edinburgh for the Fringe there, which is really just a gigantic comedy festival now. Mm-hmm. And I remember being there the first year, and I saw Eddie Izzard was playing.
Yes.
In a small venue, like just in, baggy jeans and a, t-shirt and looking like a schlub. And, he was really amazing and was coming up. We played with, I don't know if you've ever heard of Vic and Bob.
No.
They're a huge show in Britain. They were absurd and we were weird. And, it was the big thing was to get nominated for the Perrier Award, which was the best comedy award at the festival. And then we were shortlisted. We're down to 5 choices and we were nominated, but we didn't win. And so we got to go down and do a show in London, and we started touring in London. We did a little bit of television there. And from that, we went to Melbourne, did a couple of years there, and we tried to tour in Melbourne, tour in Australia, and we did a little bit of touring there. But it just is hard because no one knew what to do with this thing.
I'm trying to use the phone!
Do you think it was like, because then jump ahead a few years, there's Flight of the Conchords and, other satirical thing. Do you think you were ahead of your time where now they kind of know more, and there's more and more kind of, musical comedy groups?
What do you know about Flight of the Conchords? And at the time in Australia, there was a guy called the Doug Anthony All-Stars, and we're 3 guys who did music and political satire, basically. But they were very popular. They had their own TV show. But we were always foreign. Like everywhere we went, we couldn't get that at home. And we couldn't get that base of like having a television show at home. It never happened for us. And they always had that, New Zealand bought into the Flight of the Conchords, made their television show, gave them that opportunity. And we just never got that support at home because we were too weird for Canada. Like, people always say, oh, Canadians. But when I get Canadian journalists always ask, why do Canadians have such a great sense of humor? And I'm like, that is not true. They don't. There's a few really great comics and there are great comedians in Canada, but I think the general run of Canadian sense of humor is really bad. And it shows in the side of television that we make. Like, we just don't make Flight of the Conchords. We don't do that. We don't make The Mighty Boosh. We don't do that. It's just not groundbreaking. We don't do The Office. We don't do anything like that. Okay, I guess I'm jumping over a bit, but we ended up thinking we're going to work on doing live shows, and we're going to start in Toronto. We found like the Kids in the Hall. They were kind of a generation before us, maybe 10 years. Mm-hmm. And they were lucky because they had that. They had the television show. And it was because Lorne Micheals came to CBC and said, we'll do this with you, with my company, Broadway Video, and it's going to be on HBO. If it was just going to be Canada, never would have happened.
Right.
But with Lorne Micheals saying, I, master of Saturday Night Live, who came to you with Saturday Night Live, and you said, no, thank you. This is another show I want to do. And they said, okay. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy. And like, they were amazing. And they just did things that were just so radical, like the characters, and they had no fear. And it was so great. And we thought, we're going to model ourselves on that. We're going to do that. The Rivoli was the place they played all the time.
Yes.
Which is kind of a classic venue. It's a small, sweaty room, and there's a restaurant in front of it, but it's a small, sweaty room, and you can really control a smaller audience. It's about, at the most, 150 people if you jam it. And they had a history of comedy. They understood what it would take. And so we would do runs there of like a week, which is unheard of at the time. And then we started doing this thing where we do it over between New Year's and Christmas. We do a thing called Hogmanay, which was the Scottish New Year. And it was just this crazy show that we do all these characters, and it got a great following. And from that, we kind of ended up doing a show. A friend of ours, Brian Hart, who was a writer and did some work on Kids in the Hall series, he got a job with MadTV. And he was the head writer there, and then became executive producer.
So he brought you guys in. Yeah,
yeah, he brought us in to do music.
Three appearances or more?
I think maybe 5. I'm not totally sure. We did songs, and they had us in, and it got a great response. But the people who are the cast of Mad TV are like, why are you bringing these guys in? We can do this. Why are you having them do these things? And so that kind of petered out as well. And that's when I kind of decided to, I'm going to try and do this myself. Like, I just wanted to try and perform alone, and which was very hard because, you're always with a trio. You're always
I've done a lot of like solo shows in Edinburgh and other places, and it's kind of lonely.
Oh, it's lonely.
It's like, hey, I'm in a packed room, the center of attention. Then minutes later, it's like, well, I guess I'll go eat.
Well, that's the thing. You always have someone to, pick up the slack if you're dragging.
Well, just a shared experience, too.
Yeah.
It's like, if it goes bad, you just laugh about it. But,
and, you're always traveling together. You're always supporting in that way. So when I started traveling and trying to do my own thing, I did a character named Dame Sybil Thorndike, who's this crazy old woman. I'd improvise theater stories that when I was going through college, acting college, there would always be people telling you stories, anecdotes of the theater, like, oh, Oliver Reed showed up one day. So I made this character who's just like would tell stories that were incredibly violent, and stupid, and, horrible things happening, and about my life as an actor. And then I took that and toured a bit, and it was fun, but it wasn't direct enough. And I went back to Toronto in 99, and I did 98. There was this great little room at the Second City at that time called the Tim Sims Theater. It was like a studio theater, and I did a month of shows. And I did the show called Wood, Cheese, and Children, which was just ridiculous. I did everything I could think of, songs and characters and puppets, and I did everything. And it was like 2 hours long. And from that, I got a lot of attention, and then I ended up at Just for Laughs on my own right and did the show there and did showcases, and I got an agent, and I ended up signing a deal with Universal Television, a guy named David Kissinger, who was hunting talent there. And that nothing came of that in itself, but I moved down to Los Angeles, and I just started, trying to figure out myself how to do this. But again, you run into this problem where there's the whole machine at that point, like where it was, you go and you look at Ray Romano and you go, oh, Ray Romano, his stand-up, you could just turn that into a show.
Right.
It's like, well, his kooky mom and dad and then there's King of Queens or whoever, it's the same thing. It's a formula. And I was just not that. Like I was something weird and no one knew what to do with me. And I wrote a script. The first script, I had to deal with CBS for 2 years. And my first script was called Father Sean, where I was a priest at an inner city. And we wrote a pilot with Mark Driscoll, who had won an Emmy on the Ellen show, on Ellen, the first Ellen series. And I thought, oh, this is really funny. And we wrote this pilot and we had it read for Les Moonves, who was the head of CBS at that time. And there was a little theater in Hollywood and we did it. We read it with Tony Shalhoub was one of the characters, John Cryer. Like, it was amazing. The CBS said, I don't like priests. I don't think that'll work. But try again. So we wrote that next year I got another deal. I thought, oh, this will be good. So I worked with Alan Zweibel, who was a writer on Saturday Night Live.
Legend.
Yeah, he's great. He's an amazing guy. And we wrote a show called Legend of the Falls, where I was a guy named Sean Legend who lived at Niagara Falls. And I did videos of people's weddings. And I had a dream of being a big movie director. The plot of the thing was a mobster's daughter's getting married. And he gives me the rings. He said, I want you to do some kind of collage with these video collage. And if then she'd make her happy and whatever. So I put them up on my windowsill and I'm shooting them. I live right by the Niagara Falls, so I could see the background, the rings. And then a monkey appears climbing into the window and takes the rings and leaves. And I'm like, what the hell? And we're trying to find this monkey. I don't know what the hell's happening. And it turns out the woman upstairs is babysitting a monkey and it's stealing things from all over the place. But I have to ask my girlfriend before I find that out, I have to find my girlfriend and ask her to give me money to buy wedding rings, though I have not bought her one. And it's a fun little pilot. We showed him that, and Les Moonves does not like monkeys. He has a thing about monkeys. So he said no.
And monkeys.
He does not like them. So that didn't happen. But they're going to sign another deal. But in the middle of that year, Lorne Micheals came to see me do a benefit concert. It was for Phil Hartman Foundation. It was a weird little show, but it was big, and they were raising money for a kind of scholarship program for comedians to give them help to get started. I did a set, and he was there, and he said, would you come down and do a showcase for my writers at Saturday Night Live? I said, I'd love that. So I went down, did it, and they said, would you like to be on the show? And I said, oh, yes, but I have a deal with CBS. Can we kind of find some way to get me out of that? And they said, no, you do that, and then we'll have a job. And I just couldn't get out of the deal. So
oh, wow.
That was a pain, but that's life. Anyway, I said, I'm not going to be in a deal because it doesn't seem to lead to anything. Because I have to sit around. They kept thinking,
you're getting paid not to do TV.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of it's okay, but it felt like I'd missed a huge opportunity because I was locked up, and they had an image of me where I was the next Kevin James. Like he had told me, Les Moonves, you're the next Kevin James. And I said, I'm not Kevin James.
Yeah.
I'm not like him at all. And I don't want to be a dumb guy with a hot wife who's smarter than he is. It just did not interest me. The year ended. I got out of that deal, and then nothing really happened. And for about a year, I was just struggling. And then I said, oh, well, what? We went to NBC and they were interested. We were going to sign a deal. And then the day we had the meeting, I went home. They were saying, we're going to send papers over, we're going to sign a deal. And then it was 9/11. And
Oh boy.
everything stopped.
Yeah.
Nothing was being made. The world went away.
Right. And they even said comedy's going to go away.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, comedy's
gone.
over.
And that's when, too, it was weird because it was kind of like the end of deals, too. Paradigm shifted, and it was like, we're never giving anybody money anymore.
Excuse me.
We were giving so many of those deals, and it
Yeah.
just for insane amount of money.
Yeah. And I was like, that's too bad. But it just changed. And then I got a great thing for, I did a few episodes of Ellen's second series, Ellen DeGeneres Show. But before that, we did a pilot for a sketch show. And the cast was like Tim Conway,
Oh, wow.
Ellen, me,
Yeah.
and a couple of other Canadian actors. And it was so amazing working with Tim Conway. Like, he was my hero. Like, I just thought, this guy's the best. And he was so nice and funny. And Ellen was before she got her talk show, you
Right.
know?
She was still sitcom Ellen, not talk show
Yeah,
at that
and
point.
she is the lesbian. And it was like crazy. And so there was that around her. And she was, I think, struggling to make the next show or continue her career. And she was great to me. So I got to do a few episodes of that. And Martin Mull was on that show, and Cloris Leachman. And
What was
just
it like for a Canadian guy growing up north of, or I'm not sure north of, outside of Toronto, working with these legends?
It was shocking. Every time you work with somebody like that, you're just like, Cloris Leachman, I love her. She's so funny. And
Yeah, young Frankenstein. Gosh.
I mean,
that alone.
yeah. And then Rhoda,
Yep.
as she was like so great in that, just like Phyllis, Phyllis, I forget what her last name was in that show, but she was so funny and kind and just great. Martin Mull, like, I loved a show called Fernwood Tonight with
Yeah,
him.
you did that
and
with Fred Willard.
Fred Willard. Oh my God. And Michael McKean was involved in that. And I think Richard Mars, who is the Nazi in The Producers, was on that show all the time.
Okay.
And it was such a great thing. I'd met Fred Willard because I was in Montreal. He was doing going around to people's homes in Montreal saying, if you haven't been able to go to the shows, we'll bring you in. We're bringing you shows to your house. So we just knock on people's doors, and he'd come in and host it, and we'd do a little comedy show, and they'd film it for The Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Oh, that's a great pitch.
It was really fun, and he's hilarious. Such a crazy, nice, sweet guy. And so I'd met him, and then I did shows, The Tonight Show. I did a bunch of, I'd come on and make people on the street sing songs that I'd force them to make up, and that was fun. So got to meet Martin Mull, and he was just the nicest man. The one thing I loved about him was he had this thing where every time he was shooting a scene, he'd be talking to someone you couldn't see. To start the scene, he'd improvise something. Well, he'd get in sitcoms, you shoot it a few times. We've seen it a few times in front of a live audience. And then he would start the last take with, he'd be talking to someone you couldn't see, yelling through a window outside, or on the phone, or just closing the door. And he'd do some ridiculous, you can't put it in there, it gets sore. And then close the door, and everybody'd be ready to laugh, or, and he just was so funny, just naturally funny. That's the same with Tim Conway, just a beautiful, talented guy. Like, for example, Tim Conway, we had this thing where we're horses at a horses dating singles bar. So we have horse heads on, and we're all walking around, and we come into the bar, and we all drink from buckets, and we say, can we get a refill? We do this scene 3 or 4 times. And he goes, yep, and pours into the buckets. Then he says, on the third take, we go up to him and say, "Can we get refills?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, do you mind if I go to the bathroom first?" And we're like, "Okay." And then he just stands there like, there's a bar in front of me, stands there. And we're dying, right? And it's the funniest thing. It's so great. Like he's
Yeah.
just perfect. But, meeting people like that is amazing. And I got to work with that guy, and I just was amazed by how brilliant they are, Sorry
Yeah,
if
so we
I'm
don't-
talking
Oh,
crap.
no, that's the whole point, is to have you talk. I already know what I sound like when I talk.
Oh, okay.
I already know my stories. Out of all the projects you've done, and you have like an IMDb page the size of like a small phone book, what have you found the most creatively challenging and rewarding?
Well, I mean, I did my own show up here in Canada. They've had a mental lapse, and they gave me 6 episodes, and I wrote all of them. And it was a really weird show. I wanted it to be kind of like the Jack Benny show, where it's like at a house, and but I would talk directly to the audience. The audience would yell back at me, and weird things would happen. There was a Sasquatch that lived next door with an evil woman who wanted to kill me, and it was weird, but it didn't land well here in Canada because they just don't get it. It was that I think more now it might do better, but anyway, that was incredibly challenging because it's all you, and you're all, and it was so satisfying and fun to do, and the people we collected to do it all ended up, like, one of them's a writer in Hollywood once, and was in Schitt's Creek, and they were all done really well, and they were all excellent. So that was probably the hardest thing, because it was just, I had to do everything. I was a producer, and I wrote, and I had to edit it, and it was kind of a real education. But the problem was, by the time I did the 6 episodes, I was like, I get it now. I get what I have to do. And they were like, yeah, that's it. No more. So, but right now, I'm just finished writing a novel. I've written 5 for young readers, and they're published with Penguin up here in Canada. I finished. That was incredibly satisfying, writing a novel, being able to just get to the end and do those things. When you finish writing it, you're like, God, I wrote a lot of words, and now it's there on a bookshelf. So that's pretty incredible. I love doing animated voices, and we do this great show called Rocket Monkeys, where I met a bunch of wonderful friends and who have the same kind of sensibility as me. So now we're working on a new show with a friend of mine called Chris Locke, who's a comedian in Canada, really kind of the same kind of weird sense of humor as me. And we do these 2 characters, Tony and Keith, and we just go around the ship, a little boat, and in an endless ocean, and just go to islands and meet weird people. It's all improvised. So that's an animation we're just in the point of pitching now for an adult audience. And we're taking this show to Edinburgh, and I haven't been there.
Oh, are you taking it this summer? Which
Yes.
is next month? Oh, great.
Yeah.
What venue are you going to be at?
Gilder Balloon. It's a place called Patter House, and it's the Dram, which is about 90 seats. And the characters, the show's called Chris and Sean are 2 sailors who are nuts. And so we dress as sailors, and we come in, and we just talk about the sea. And it's kind of an hour of kind of rambling improvisation and little songs and stuff. And it's really, really fun to do, and no pressure. And I'm just looking forward to doing that. So we're leaving in a week, and we'll do the whole thing.
When is the last time you've been back to Edinburgh, or the last time you've done a show there?
Last time I did a show there was probably 2015. I did a one-off, like, one-night show. It was fun. I haven't done like this kind of run in a long time. So it's going to be every day for 28 days.
Yes.
It's changed a lot, I'm sure. I mean, the old days, it was like more centralized. Like,
there was like, just like one place to go, like at the end of the night. Now there's just like so many after-hour artist bars, like in everything.
Yeah.
Before there was like one place you'd see all your friends.
Yeah.
And then just catch up. And
the Gilder Balloon used to be Yeah, and you go there and you do late and live, and it was so amazing. You see just incredible performers there, and then a band, and people get drunk, and it was like an industry hangout. Now it's kind of diffused a bit, so I don't know what it'll be like, and we'll see. I'm
Yeah,
looking
it's just
forward.
crazy big like BBC tents and these, as they say, quote, it's gone corporate, man.
It's gone corporate. That's the way it's
That's the way of
working.
the world.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it.
And then I guess, just a few last questions here. How have you seen comedy change since the days you've started? Like, what would be like the key factors other than the obvious, streaming? And
Well, streaming is
all
a
that.
big thing. Like,
Yeah.
if the Juice Pigs had, I think we hit a level where we couldn't get anywhere, especially in America and North America.
Well, now
I
you would
think,
just be like a viral sensation, like every song,
yeah,
on
it would go
YouTube and
everywhere.
Instagram and TikTok and whatnot.
Yeah, but we just didn't have that access, and trying to get what we did on television was really like impossible. Like it was just so hard. It's tiring to kind of hit your head against that all the time. So I guess the change would be you can see comedy, like the access to it is so much greater now. And when I was a kid, there was 3 networks, and then Fox came in, and there were 4. And if you had cable, you had HBO, you could see some comedy there. But I would remember being a kid and hoping there was a comic on Johnny Carson, and to get on Johnny Carson was a big deal.
In Canada, was there equivalent talk show
No.
that also Canadian comedians would break, or just everyone
Nope.
watched the Tonight Show?
That's the beautiful thing about Canada is there's no opportunities like that. They don't even try. I mean, so many, like, I think there should be one, but they just don't want to even try. They just go, people will watch that. I said, well, why don't you try and give them something that they would watch? And they just won't. I've tried to, I pitched tons, and I did a pilot for one, and they just were like, I don't think so, or just no. And I think it would be great. That's the biggest problem here is that there's a pyramid that's got like one person at the top of it, and that person does every show, and there's no room to expand, and there's not enough people. There's not enough audience to be an alternative sensation. Like the thing is, if you're Tim Robinson, right? It starts off being this show that a few people know about. I think you should leave. And then everybody talks about it and tells their friends who love comedy. And then it becomes something, and it becomes the biggest thing. That just doesn't happen in Canada because there's not enough of that groundswell or like grassroots stuff to make enough money for enough people and to sustain it until it becomes, like always, alternative stuff becomes the mainstream over time as it becomes popular, right?
Yeah.
So that just doesn't happen. It has to be popular immediately or it's nothing, Canada. So what's changed?
Yeah. Have you find do you think you could get away with as much stuff now as you did before? I'm just talking about, let's say like Tenacious D, just because it happened like last week, their tour got canceled. Do you think there's more of a problem of stuff like that now? Say back in the day, and now it's like, oh, we have to completely cancel, like their tour because out of comedy.
Yeah, being canceled probably would be the greatest thing that ever happened to me. If somebody would notice I was alive, that'd be amazing. But I don't know. I think the biggest, people say, oh, you used to be able to say this and that. Because it was easy, it was kind of a cheap joke. It would be easy to do that. I think audiences have become a lot more sophisticated. And as a society, for the most part, at least half of America, has become a lot more empathetic to each other and realize that you can't just shred somebody and that's funny, or you can't go for the easy laugh. You can't punch down. I think that's the biggest difference that's happened is punching down is not cool and it's not smart enough, But the one big difference, I guess, when I first started out, there was kind of like a an apprenticeship program, like you were kind of learned the ropes and you figured it out and you learned your craft. Now you're immediately given access to like the internet or whatever. Or you're
Yeah.
on the YouTube. You're like immediately, you don't go through any kind of apprenticeship. And I think that's not good. Like, I think it isn't good for artists to not have that kind of beat down to figure out why they do it, why they want
Yeah.
it.
Play those hard gigs in Saskatoon.
Yeah. And, they'll think they do it. Like when I go and I play a show with a bunch of young people, they think they've really, there's that whole thing of like diversity where when I was starting, like, yeah, there was everybody was white, true, but everyone was also men, and they were the most fucking awful people. Like they just beat you down, and it wasn't easy. Like I didn't get, here, you're a white man, go have your television show. That was not the case. It was really competitive and hard. And now I think it's actually pretty accessible getting your story out there. I was amazed by how much comedy now is just you talking about your problem, or whatever thing you think is holding you back, or
Well,
it's
just
like
kind of that
therapist.
mixture of you could do an hour show and have comedy mixed with, say, tragedy or, these serious bits. I mean, again, it's typical Edinburgh show, really.
Yeah.
Hour-long Edinburgh show is to mix that up.
Yeah, well, it is like life is funny, but also sad, and tragedy, comedy is tragedy with time. But, you see a lot of like shows that, they get an hour-long special or a comedy special, and you go like, this isn't comedy really. It's a play, right? It's not really, I understand what it is, and it's great, but it's not really a guy or a girl or anyone going out there and being funny for the audience.
Mhm.
A lot of the time, like when I was starting, we were entertaining the audience. It wasn't the audience feeling like they have to laugh because I've had a tough time. Like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if I'm making myself clear. It's not therapy. It's entertainment.
Yeah,
You
that's
should
always
entertain.
like you should. I used to teach like storytelling classes. It's like one thing I learned to teach to like students is don't make the audience feel like it's your therapy session,
Yeah.
because it's
Well,
like don't leave them out of the equation because they're the one who paid the ticket.
well, they paid money, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And people are looking. I think we went through a really kind of dark time, and we're still in it. But I think people are looking for silliness now. Like I think people want to see some really just laugh and not feel like they're laughing for the right reason or anything.
yeah.
That still exists, but I think they're coming up to a place. Like I really love Will Ferrell. You love him or hate him, whatever. But he does it wholeheartedly
He'll
to be
commit.
funny.
Yeah.
To be funny. It's
Yes.
not about how can you help me. It's let me help you enjoy your life. I love him. And people like that, it's gone through a time where there's not a lot of people like that. Like Ryan Reynolds, pretty funny guy, but yeah, he's handsome, so he gets a bonus
Yeah.
of being incredibly gorgeous. I think there's going to be a golden age. I don't know, of like a whole new way of entertaining people, and it comes with the medium too. Like it comes with the change in streaming, and the great thing about all this streaming is people subscribe to it, and they don't have to watch it.
Mhm.
If you give the horrible thing about network was always it's public in a way, and they can complain. My children shouldn't see people with breasts hanging out. Don't watch it then. If they really don't subscribe, then they don't have to watch it, right?
Exactly.
So there's that possibility is really opened up. So you see things like Baskets, which is just the
Oh boy.
strangest
Yeah.
show.
Great show.
Yeah, and it's like, but that would never get on network television. Like that would offend everybody in the world on network television. I think we have a fight ahead too, as people telling you what's morally right and wrong, and that's what comedy's for. It's supposed to make fun of that or to push the edge of that and
Take on the powers that be.
Well, yeah, upwards, strike
Yeah.
upwards, not down, and that's I think the best thing we've learned. And I think it just comes with sophistication. Bob Newhart just died, and he never did anything mean. He wasn't a mean comic, and he was so controlled and quiet, but so funny. And you could just love what he did because it was so clever. And that kind of stuff, like I just so sad it kind of has gone out of the world, because those guys are so rare, and they're just funny for their thing. Is they have this thing they do, and it's perfect, and
Yeah,
it works so
it's all of
hard.
them. I think he recorded his first comedy album after like only doing comedy like a month, and it became such an iconic comedy album.
Well, his whole, talking to people on the phone, or
Yes.
the people who you can't hear the other end of the conversation, it's just fantastic. Just fantastic.
People want
It's
to
become
laugh.
like-
And
people
as
want to laugh.
things get darker, you want to laugh even more.
Yeah, and I think there's so many great people making great things, and I wish I'd had the kind of opportunities, to do what they did, but I had different opportunities, which,
Yeah, but there's still opportunities now. So
I hope so.
Yeah.
I'm not dead yet.
Yeah.
But who knows?
I always love asking this to comedians: is what is the most memorable worst gig you've ever had?
Oh, well, there's a bunch, because there's always terrible gigs. But I was flown down to New York to do a show for, I think it was an MTV show, where there was, it was called, I don't remember the name of the show. It was called Mom's Night Out or something. It was all women who were given wine, right? And like there was their night out. That was the concept of the show. And you come in and perform. And it was in a studio. And there was a guy who was, I was on like last, and the show was epic, and they drunk. And the person who was warming up, like he was this warm up guy, and he kept coming in and doing material and talking to the women in the audience, and making them love him, right? And so every time he came out, between sets, the people would be like, oh, and he make them talk, and and then right before I went on, he did 15 minutes. I'm doing it like a 5-minute spot. He did 15 minutes of stand up, all about them and talking to them, and crowd work.
Right.
I came out, and they just hated my guts. Like they were.
It's like, why is he not talking about us too?
He's way better than them. Yeah, why is he not on the show? And they just were like, it was like, and I just let the stage. I said, I don't know what that was about, like, to the producer, but that was kind of a waste of my time. And they were upset, but they said, you can come back and do it again. But I was in Toronto, and they said, you can come back and do it again, but you have to pay for your own flight. And so I had to go back down and do it, pay to get there and do it myself again. And it went okay. You realize after a long time doing it that you're not bad, because you've been doing it for 35 years. You're good at what you do. And when you first start, you're like, oh, I'm the worst. Everybody knows I'm terrible. And when you've done it for 30 years, you're like, that wasn't a good one. But I know that it's not all my fault. Maybe I could have done something different, but it doesn't mean I'm a terrible comic. It just means that was a bad day. I remember the one other thing. I remember coming for an audition oh, God. It was for Spamalot.
Yes.
Right.
My girlfriend just saw that a few months ago on Broadway.
Oh, yeah. So I was, going to do the touring company, and I was supposed to, they said, we'd be interested in you to come down to New York and audition for the King, right? The part that Tim Curry was playing, King Arthur. So I said, oh, I'd love to do that. So I fly down. I'm in the middle of rehearsing another show, which is, a big pain in the ass to get out of. And I fly down, I had to pay for my own hotel. I had to get downtown. I go to the theater for the audition. I'm supposed to sing a song and do a scene. The guy comes out who's doing the scene with me. He's an actor from the cast and one of the chorus guys. Totally upstages me, the whole thing. Like, steals every scene, talking down to me and rolling his eyes and doing all this shit, and they're laughing their asses off in this audience. It's Mike Nichols, I think, was directing it, and he was there, and I sang my song, and I was like, this is the worst. And, and it's a huge theater, and there's like a tiny little place with lights in the middle, and they're under those. And Mike Nichols says, have you ever thought about getting singing lessons? Maybe that could help you.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, oh, thank you. Thank you. That's why you asked me to fly down here, to tell me that maybe I could get singing lessons. That is so helpful. I really appreciate it. And those are the more humiliating and upsetting moments, when you feel like you've just been violated by someone's complete what would you call it? Indifference to someone's life. So that was disappointing. But you feel sad at the moment, but you know what? The next show's probably going to be great, and that you forget all about it. Like, it's hard for me to remember really bad shows because they just kind of wash away. But then the thing about being a comic is, you have a terrible show, you're sitting in a hotel room afterwards by yourself, going, oh, that was the worst. Everyone knows I suck. And then you have to deal with that until the next show, maybe 2 or 3 days. And then it's fine.
Exactly.
Then it's big laughs and it's all great. So you don't worry about it.
Hear, hear. Sean, thank you so much. And where can people find you? And what would you like to plug? You mentioned your Edinburgh show.
Sure.
Anything? What else?
The Edinburgh show is called Chris and Sean Are Two Sailors Who Are Nuts. And you can get tickets at the Gilded Balloon. If you're going over there to the Edinburgh Fringe, check it out, Gilded Balloon. And look on the Fringe website. We're also working on a show called Tony and Keith Are Two Sailors Who Are Nuts. You can get samples of that on, what's it called? The Bandcamp? Yeah, it's one of them. And, we on Apple Music. Also, well, what else am I doing? I don't know. Is that enough? I hope so.
Yeah. Well, Sean, first, really nice to meet you. And thank you so much for the great stories.
I hope it was okay. It might
hope it was
be completely
okay.
boring. Who knows?
It was great, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And take care of yourself.
You too. Okay,
And,
take care.
Hope we'll see you again.
Yes. All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
And yes, that wraps up our episode of Comedy History 101, where you got schooled in comedy. I'd like to thank my friend Jean-Francois for hooking me up with Sean. And remember, go see Sean's show in Edinburgh if you happen to be in Edinburgh. Also, a quick plug on Sunday, August 4th, 8:30 at the People's Improv Theater in Manhattan, I'll be presenting my show, AI versus Human Roast Battle. Come out and see a machine learning AI take on a human comedian in a roast battle of tomorrow. And you can find out all about my show dates at Harmon Leon on the social medias or on my website, harmonleon.com. Also, take some time to like, subscribe, and comment on Comedy History 101 on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. I know I say this every episode, but be sure to do it this time. And you can find out more about Comedy History 101. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, or on our site, comedyhistory101.com. And until next time, bye-bye.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone!
Comedy History 101.